I don't know, like going into some sort of reflection on myself now, who I am, what I have done in my life, what I've become, or who I've become, or maybe with different elements to myself. Maybe I have more than a single person that I've become. That I'm, yeah, like my identity is like it's somewhat like I would say fractured or divided. You know, that's the mode of schizophrenia, isn't it? That's what schizotypal identity constructs or personality constructs would sort of break down into a division within yourself. Like, how can your personality be divided unless you have more than one personality? The thing is, like, I create personalities all the time. It's sort of like as an author, it's my stock in trade. So I had to create Frank Carson. I had to create this character, this amazing character who I love, and this strange man, who's once comforting to a sort of perhaps naive though not unintelligent girl like Phoebe, the character Phoebe Carpenter in the book. She's about 23 years old, so she's somewhat like naive of the world of people in their 40s, if you know what I mean. But which can't be helped with age. And Frank Carson is like her sort of window into that world, and also a kind of a window into the past. And like he's kind of like her mentor. And he does this with sort of every other, like whenever like a striking young blonde arrives on the force in Swindon, right? And yeah, he like he recruits these young women, and they become like his, I don't know, network of something, or like he forges allegiances this way. I don't know. Yeah, it's whatever it is, whatever like the underlying motivation is, like in the chessboard of his mind. But yeah, I was proud of having written that in my 20s. This quantum gravity stuff also, like, there's a saying about sort of geniuses doing their greatest work before they're 27. I did do that before I was 27. And like, I do, yeah, like it strikes me as being the sort of thing one would remember one for probably the most, actually. There's like a sort of Stephen Hawking / Einsteinish discovery or theory or something of that nature. Well, then, yeah, I guess like it deserves recognition for like for posterity, doesn't it? Like like it's uh, a dynamic particle-based model of gravity. What do we like a stochastic or demi-stochastic bounded continuum of particles? Something of that nature. Or just a plenum of fermions exchanging bosons in various configurations and states, from mesons and hadrons down to the basic leptons and quarks of the standard model. And you can like subdivide that far and sort of bring your cosmological thinking, I suppose, like beyond, or further back to past nucleosynthesis towards the spontaneous breaking of symmetries, which supposedly gave rise to quarks condensing out of a sort of quark gluon plasma, I suppose it would be. Could it be that like black holes are just QGP without an outer layer of neutrons? And that like somehow that's possible if you pass the Schwarzschild radius without passing the Chandrasekhar limit. Am I even pronouncing that correctly? So like, is it type 2A supernovae condenses either into a neutron star or a pulsar or a black? No, it's type 2B. Yes. Or is it? No, those are just brown dwarfs. No, they don't. Type 2b. Type 2a. I can't fucking remember. I like doing cosmological bodge jobs of like trying to squeeze steady state physics and Big Bang cosmology together to sort of fuse a new idea by breeding them. And it's on very, very large scales, the unbelievable scales of possibly, probabilistic gravitational cosmology or something. You could infer that the universe, is roughly speaking steady and homogeneous and isotropic also, and that the cosmological principle holds at extraordinarily vast areas of space if we're inferring a similar content of matter and energy in somewhat similar configurations and states within this region of the inferable universe, if I want to think of it that way. There's like fluxion also on this plenum of energy and matter. Dark energy filling up areas between galaxy clusters in intergalactic space, driving the expansion of the spaces between them. Likewise, you have regions which get darker and all the stars burn out, or there are no longer enough main sequence stars, and stars spilling out these huge amounts of radiation to keep this expansion going. So these dark regions go into kind of a collapse because the surrounding gravity overpowers the forces within the region, because the gravity of the region itself is quite weak. Its gravity is quite weak, and there's no longer this electromagnetic radiation pressure emanating from that region of universe, if you like. So it will collapse in on itself, and in doing so, reignite fusion processes. And if we're imagining a truly vast plenum of the universe, not imagine that something is condensing on that plenum as a result of these summed functions of exploration in terms of different configurations of matter and energy. That there is motion as an inherent and implacable or incontrovertible property of nature, if you see what I mean. So things in nature must move. This is the basis of like an assumption, I think. It's the medium of other particles that slows energy down to light speed, to approximately 300 million meters per second. That we find ourselves in a kind of molasses state where you've got air atoms around me now, so nitrogen atoms mostly, and oxygen and carbon dioxide and so on, and I am interacting with them. They're bouncing off my skin all the time. So in addition to that, there's visible light, there's microwaves and X-rays and gamma rays and radio waves and all this sort of stuff, and microwaves, and these surround us. So I don't know really from what sort of logic a cosmologist might infer that the universe will be expanding forever. I think it fails to take into consideration thinking on a much larger bandwidth, if you like, and on using scales that are far larger than those we encounter through direct observation. But what we may draw, for instance, in terms of inferences about, say, the range of gravity. If we want to make the range of gravity of an object associated with its mass, or associated in a more pointed and acute sense on the likelihood of its constituent particles tunneling to different parts of the universe. I made say draw a line. I think I calculated something ridiculous. It was like 51 quadrillion light years. Yeah. Or some huge number of light years. It's far larger than that, in fact, a number. And 10 to the 50 light years. 10 to the 53 light years. Number 53 zeros after it. And seeing the condensation of matter on the larger plenum, possibly. And the emergence of fundamental properties. If we're talking about fluxion, we might as well talk about torsion and things like spin. And, what spin amounts to, some sort of torsion or fluxion on a manifold. Or torsion and fluxion on a I suppose membrane is actually quite a good word, isn't it? Like, or field is like what quantum field theory would say about it. Particle physics. What is it, like one harmonic on the old string 10 to the 500 bandwidth or something, is it? But yeah, like I do see arcing and fluxion, and like mathematically sophisticated forms in nature, and you do see the beauties of symmetry breaking, I think, around us, most certainly. And I think I see it personally, my deeper inferences about a larger cosmos. But and maybe it's infinite. And then what is infinity other than, what we know, and like how high we can count? Isn't that sort of part of it? What can we infer about infinity, other than that it is without end? And perhaps the universe has no end, as it's infinite in extent, and the universe condenses in the form of subatomic particles upon manifolds of unobservable microscopic universe. And we see our faces drawn out of older and larger cosmology. Perhaps.